much. It's great to be here this evening. Just wanted to say welcome to everybody who's joined today. I hope you're going to enjoy the next session. And I wanted to start off with a bit of food for thought, really. Today I'm going to be talking about leadership through change, and I've got a few statements here. And I'd like you to be really honest with yourself about how you feel about change. And I've got 4 or 5 points here I'd like you to look at. First of all, change is exciting and I fully embrace it. Change is a healthy, positive thing. Change is something I can do nothing about but is inevitable and I have to go with it. Changing something that's already working seems daft, and sometimes I struggle with change. Now, I think you'd agree there's some conflicting views there, and I'd like you to think about how you really feel about change, and I want you to be brutally honest about it, guys, because what tends to happen if we're in a leadership role or we're running a business, we're probably thinking about the first two and saying, oh yes, I should be thinking this change is exciting and I embrace it and it's a really healthy, positive thing. However, probably most of us, if we are being really honest with ourselves, are thinking actually change is something I can do nothing about but is inevitable and I have to go for it and go with it. And that's partly down to human nature. It's very unusual to find people who really naturally embrace change and really find change exciting and fulfilling and something that they want to do all of the time. Most of us tend to enjoy it when we know what we're doing, when we know we've got a routine, when we know we're capable of what we're doing now, and when the status quo is working. So many times I've heard people saying, well, if it's already working, why on earth do we have to change it? Why do we need to fix it? And often when we talk to team members, they're saying, well, surely something that's already working seems daft, or sometimes I really struggle with change. I find it really uncomfortable. And I think, again, if we are being really honest with ourselves, probably, the last 3 points are the ones that we would tend to agree with more, whether with our leadership head on or not, we feel that we should be saying the first 2. And the thing is, guys, if that's what you feel, how do others feel? And it is really pretty much the same way that you do. As human beings, we tend not to like change, generally. I know that's a generalisation, but it is something we like to be confident in what we're doing. We very much like to surround ourselves by levels of comfort. This is all down to cognitive behaviour and, wanting to make sure that, we're part of the herd mentality and we're doing what we're doing and we're fitting in and everything's going okay. And change can be incredibly scary and very off-putting for people. And, so if we've got the collywobbles about it a little bit, we need to think about what's happening if we start to implement change within practice, because everybody else is going to be thinking that as well. And there's some really good tips and pointers just to give you a little bit of guidance on hopefully how to make the change management process work more effectively and really bring your team members along with you in order to help protect them, make them realise that change isn't scary, that it is necessary, and that there is a reason for doing things. And if we can give that, then very often we can start making this change management process an ongoing thing, because sadly, as you all know, we can't just stand still. Change is inevitable. We have to go with it. And actually what we need to do is to really be very aware of everybody's motivations and see how we can really take this forward in a really, really positive way, because quite often, not only ourselves but our team members are really quite scared of the process. So I'm going to introduce you to my fictitious practice team. I'd like you to meet my guys. I've got 4 members of staff here I'm going to introduce you to. The first one is Matt. Here he's a qualified VN and he's been with the practice for 5 years. He's incredibly reliable. He's absolutely fantastic at his job. He's really confident and committed, and he's that go-to member of staff that whenever you want anything doing, Matt's your man. Matt consequently gets loads and loads of work. We rely on him for loads of stuff. If you want something doing, we'll get Matt to do it because I know it's going to be okay. I don't have to worry about it. And I'm sure you can think of members of staff that you've got back in practice that this really does apply to. I'd like you to introduce you to Lindsay next. She's one of our qualified VNs. She's been with the practice for 3 years, a super girl. She's really keen to do well and tries hard, but a little lacking in confidence. And because of that, she might not always be our go-to girl. She might not always be the first choice to get the job done. If Matt's available, we'll try and give it to him. But actually, if Matt can't do it, then we might branch out and start looking at Lindsay to see if she can help us with it. But she might not necessarily be our first choice. Then we've got Tina. She's absolutely fantastic. She's a proper corker, is our Tina. She's been with the practice for 6 years. She's beloved by everybody. She's a really good, strong part-time receptionist and is incredibly good at her role. Clients love her. The practice love her. Everybody thinks the world of Tina. And actually, as a consequence, her opinion is held in very high esteem with the practice, with everybody in the practice team. Although she's just working part-time at the moment, she's got a receptionist role. She hasn't really got any particular managerial role within the business, but everybody always is very aware of how Tina feels about things. And if Tina is happy, then more often than not, a lot of your team members will be happy as well. They'll look to her for approval. And finally, I'd like you to meet Katie. Katie is a part-time receptionist. She's been with us for 3 years. She's very good, but she does the job and goes home. Sometimes she's a bit forgetful and she doesn't always take responsibility, which can grate a little bit, but she's a good solid worker, and you know, she does see it as a job and she does what she has to do when she's there. She's perhaps not as invested as the other 3 in the practice. So bearing in mind I've just introduced you to my mini team, I'd like to talk a little bit about team members' attitude to change. And what we should be thinking about whenever we want to make any changes in the practice is how it's going to affect everybody. Because at different levels, change is going to affect different people in different ways. Some people are going to benefit the most. Some people are going to find it easiest to take. Some are going to find it incredibly difficult. And some are going to be really vulnerable throughout this process. We mustn't ever forget this, guys. You know, when you've experienced it yourself, you can have empathy with this, because I'm sure, you know, sometimes change is enforced upon us. We don't necessarily like it, so we know exactly where everybody's coming from. But sometimes when we're in a management position and we need to get something done, we can overlook the fact that our team members are all going through this. Now, looking back to our guys, we've got Matt, if you remember, he's our proper star. We've got Lindsay, who's our slightly timid qualified VN, but, you know, she's very capable underneath it all. We've got Tina, our super-duper receptionist, who has a lot of sway in the practice. And we've got Katie, who's our part-time worker who does her job and you know, does it to the best of her ability, but it's the job and off she goes. When you think about these questions, who is going to benefit the most from the change? When we think about those team members, actually it might be Lindsay who benefits the most from the change, because it might be that in a different setting, in a different environment, with different challenges, Lindsay has that opportunity to thrive, not only survive, but to start to thrive and blossom within her role. Because it might be that we're giving her responsibility that we haven't been giving her before, but also she's kind of middle of the road at the moment as far as, you know, where we see her and where she fits in. And actually this challenge, given the right circumstances, it could really make her try and take her forward. The person who might find it easiest to take is often the person who is the least committed. So it might well be that Katie isn't really that bothered about change. If she's not as invested as the others, if she doesn't have quite such a high stake in the business, actually change is one of those things that she has to go through, and she'll go with the flow, and she's still doing her job, and she'll still do her job throughout a different set of parameters. Possibly the person who might find it the most difficult, and actually this can be really hard for you as leaders, is Matt. He's our star, because he's so good and we rely on him for everything. And if we're not careful, we can mistakenly think, well, Matt will be fine, you know, he's always been top of the tree, he'll always be top of the tree, and that will be fine. Actually, we need to be really, really aware with our key team members that those of them that are our best team members, that are doing incredibly well in the situation that they're in at the moment, have the most to lose. Because if we completely change a system, or we have a different idea of doing things, actually they've got the furthest to fall, and then they've got to pick themselves up again to try and get back up to the top. So whereas we probably think, oh, Matt will cope with it, he's an absolute star, it'll